What up, what up? Welcome back to Lockdown Universe, home of the bizarre, peculiar, and unheard of stories of UFO legend and paranormal lore. Welcome back. Happy to be back. Hopefully you guys doing excellent and taking care of yourselves. We got a whopper of a doozy today. A doozy of a Whopper 5000, Veggie Whopper, Ultimate Whopper, whatever you want to call it. Today we've got a good one. It is about the Reptilian MIB. Typically we hear about the MIB as being some chalk-like humanoids that just walk around and try to freak people out, but then easily run out of energy and become tired, and they can no longer talk to those who they are trying to investigate. And sometimes they'll even try to abduct people. But today we have the Reptilian MIB, and that is the story and the account found on phantomsandmonsters.com, where we are going to talk about an individual who made a report about these individuals in Portland, Oregon. So his statement states that he noticed about 8 to 9 reptilian-faced men in black. This experience happened in the 1970s, and this is his report. It happened in the 1970s when I was a lot younger, and I was with an older man, a friend, and some other people I knew, his son and daughter. And we took a little trip up to Portland, Oregon area, and at that time I didn't know what I was going to experience, and we stopped off at the back of some building, and I'm not exactly sure where that was. We all got out of the car. We walked up to the back end of this large building, which makes you kind of curious. Why are they getting out of the car, walking up to the back of this building? But maybe they were taking a break. Maybe they were looking for a bathroom break. I don't know. But she says they went into the rear of this place and saw rows and rows of metal little chairs for people to sit on, and there were about 100 people in front of them. It was a long building inside, and it was nighttime. So anyway, they sat down and looked around, and they didn't know who was in front of them. And they noticed about 8 to 9 guys, suits, like black jacket and black pants, and a dress-type suit and pants, like they all dressed the same. I asked, what was this? I didn't know what was going on. Are these FBI guys or what? So I sat for a little bit. I didn't want to take too much time. It was almost midnight, so I proceeded to go by myself and leave these 3 people I was with, and I walked up to right where these few fellows were all standing. I stood next to the end on the left side, and there was a whole row of them together on the right. So they were all together. I stood there for a little bit, and I had this odd feeling out of the side of my vision, my peripheral vision, my side vision. There was just something odd about the guy I was standing next to. Then the color. I could tell there was something wrong with the color of the skin of his face. I thought maybe this guy's been in a fire or something. So she's thinking this guy had burns or something. There was something wrong with this situation, and I kept looking forward. I kept looking straight ahead. Yeah, I would say there's something weird about this scenario. Why are they all being quiet, and why are they all, looking at these people, and they're in a weird situation they've never been in before? It doesn't really make any sense. So she says, eventually I turn my head and I look at this person, and to my shock, I noticed the side of his neck had this gray color. It wasn't a natural skin color. It wasn't green. It had small scales on his skin, and it was just really odd. I turned to look up at his face, and he was a lot taller than me, about 7 feet tall, and I was looking at him, which is really me looking at the lower part of his neck. I looked up at his face, or the side of the head, and he was looking straight ahead, not looking at me at first. As he started to turn his head, it would move in segments, little movements at a time. Each time his face would move. It would only become invisible, his face, so it would almost become translucent. It was very odd. Only his head, of course, as he was wearing clothes. Anyway, suddenly he tilted his head, looked at me with a look that he wasn't too happy with me. And, I'm looking at him directly. I'm looking at his face. And his face is what I would call reptilian, but not a green-skinned one. From what I know about the Men in Black and what I see on TV, they never look like a reptilian creature. This one never spoke to me. I was scared to death after what I saw, and I wonder if it had claws, and I thought I was standing too close to it, and I didn't want to. I was standing right next to it, and it was bigger than me. When I looked at it, it had gold eyes, big red gold eyes, and an unusual face. The mouth, nose, and the front of its face was really unusual. It was more of like a reptile-like thing, and the nose was really something. It was really flat looking, so the front of his nose flat looking, just really bizarre. And its eyes were big and they were gold and beautiful gold, but with a vertical slit. The eye had an eye of a pupil or a cat or an alligator, very slit. I just started walking ahead of it. I just didn't want to be standing there next to it any longer. And eventually I just went back with the people I was with. And I asked, can you see those guys up there? Can you see those guys in suits? And they all said they could. I wasn't imagining it. They kept saying yes, they could see them. But the weird thing is that this story ends here, and now we're left with inference and theory. So the question I have with this story is, we can get into the alien in a second, but what the hell were they doing? Why did they stop? It sounds to me like this is a female. She said she's a lot younger, and I was with an older man, a friend, and some other people I knew, his son and daughter. And we took a trip up to the Portland area. At that time, I didn't know what I was going to experience as we stopped off at the back of some building in that area. So here, to me, the question is like, why were they stopping in the back of a random building? It sounds like it's an industrial area, and they have these chairs, and it sounds like it was all pre-set up. It wasn't like it was like a one-off spontaneous thing. This was like a setup, and whoever the guy was clearly driving them all there. And then the weird thing is, throughout this entire story, she doesn't talk about the fact that there's any speeches going on. No one's talking to each other. There's no conversation going on. So what the hell are they doing there? Why did she decide to all of a sudden leave the people she was with and go up and stand next to these men in black, or reptilians in black? And let's face it, right? Like, wouldn't you look at these people, these reptilians, and just say, those are the guys I'm not going to stand next to, but yet she went up and stood next to them, making me think she was maybe either under some sort of hypnotic magic, or, they had telepathically told her to come up there, even though she says she did it out of her own volition. Seems really bizarre. And then she's able to look at them, which you would think they would kind of like, limit, although it sounds like they did make themselves translucent, which is really weird. So, like, it doesn't sound like they were wearing a mask. It sounds like they were making themselves translucent. They were making themselves, unseeable. However, she still saw them and saw, like, this flat nose and this reptilian scaly skin. And so, to me, that indicates, especially in the 70s, that this wasn't some sort of latex skin. This wasn't some sort of mask. This wasn't something that they could have created. I mean, this sounds like transmogrifying right in front of somebody, totally transforming the way you look, shape-shifting. And then, without, rhyme or reason, they just end up leaving. She goes back with the people that she was with, and she's just like, okay, well, I guess it's time to leave. And they get up and leave. And there's no wrap-up, there's no summary to the end of the story. There's no finalization or concrete ending here. So it makes me wonder, like, is this real? It seems like it'd be a waste of time to write this. However, everybody wants their 15 minutes of fame. It's the first story I've heard of a reptilian and Men in Black. However, we know that these Men in Black still, to this day, even in 2025, even as most recently as I believe it was Alaska, where they showed up at this office building and they kidnapped this lady, and they had it all on film, and these guys looked really weird, but basically they looked like the 1950s, black suit, black hat, but white head, tall, and not human looking, very bizarre. So even up until nowadays, they keep dressing the same. It's not like they try to even fit in. It's like it's like a one-trick pony. They're like, oh, it worked back in the 50s and 60s and 70s. Let's keep it going. Oh, they're not going to recognize us. It's like they don't even take the time to do the research to figure out what we're wearing these days. Even though, basically wearing suits still. they're probably just wearing the hat to cover their bald ass head and try to be a little bit more inconspicuous. But it seems like they're still on the loose. It seems like they're still trying to do things even in 2024, 2025. And this was going on back in the 70s. Clearly, this was her story. What do you think? Do you think this story is real? Do you think it's fake? Do you think it's, just trying to get her 15 minutes of fame? Where's the rest of it? What happened afterwards? Was there a conversation between her and the family? Did they choose to not talk about it? I was just listening to another individual who was talking about how he and his wife were in the MGM Grand in Las Vegas, and they were looking down. He was gazing down over his balcony at an illuminated pool, and they saw this red light start to glow, and it got larger and larger, and it came up to their window, and he and his ex-wife, he was with his wife at the time, but she's his ex-wife now, it came up, and it showed itself to them, and then it just blinked out of existence, and there was two people there, and the two people were aliens, and they were like, and then the guy basically like blacked out, ended up on their ship in a steel-looking bed, being inspected. His wife was being inspected, and then they ended up back at the hotel room, and he said, "Hey, do you want to talk about this?" And she's like, "No, I don't want to talk about it at all." And he got the feeling that, she never wanted to talk about it. He felt like he had to keep it under wraps. He was not going to do that. He's like, "Dude, I have to find out more about what happened to me." So he started an entire UFO experiencer forum group and still runs it. But it made him and his wife break up. It makes you wonder if some of these people who are experiencing these UFO events as abductees or straight up encounters with the MIB, that they just don't want to ruin their lives. They don't maybe want to ruin their friendships, and they just decide to move on with their lives and forget about it and internalize it and move on. It's sad, but I think it happens to more people than we know until, decades later when they're ready to talk about it and they've already lost those relationships, or they're not as important to them anymore, or they don't care what the person thinks. So, what do you think about these stories? I mean, do these stories make people be quiet? Would it make you be quiet? Would you not say anything? Would you be like, "No, I'm not going to say shit because it's going to hurt my friendship"? I'm curious. I'm curious as to what you guys have to say. I really appreciate what you guys say in the comments. It makes it worthwhile doing these podcasts. I've had a lot of health issues lately, so I haven't been able to put out as many, but I've been feeling better the past few days. So, I'm trying to stay healthy, trying to do what I can, try to get to the gym, try to walk the dogs, try to get exercise, and try to do what I can when I can. And there's days when I can't. So, like I always say, do what you can physically, spiritually, emotionally, take care of yourself, follow through on your hobbies and your goals and your dreams. And as always, continue to question the universe around you. Leave a comment in the comment section so we can talk about it more. And I'd love to hear your stories. And I have some people that want to come on the podcast. I'm definitely willing to talk to other people. I mean, I've been doing this for 5 years. I don't mind having visitors on at this point in the game. I kind of welcome the change. So if you're interested, in telling your story and having, a back and forth conversation about it, and, maybe I get to interview you or something like that, by all means, if it's a good story and it's something we can definitely talk about, I'd love to hear about it. So you can always email lockdownuniverse@gmail.com. I'll do my best to check in on it, and we'll go from there. Please like, follow, share, subscribe. That's the only way the podcast is going to stay up and keep going. All right, thanks, guys. Take care of yourselves. Lockdown Universe out. Peace.